Hi, I'm Toby Fallsgraff. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Do Big Things, and welcome to Do Big Talks. This is our first episode of the series where we're going to be talking about what's happening in the digital and tech space with some of the people who do this work and know it best. This week, I'm joined by Ryanne Brown, who is that's Ryanne Brown. She's Senior Vice President of Digital Advertising at Do Big Things. Welcome, Ryan. This week, we're talking about digital advertising, something you know really well, and voting by mail, something that everybody's talking about right now. A lot of states moving to vote by mail, some of them for the first time. A lot of voters are going to be voting by mail for the first time in their lives. And, we know that digital tools and channels are going to be some of the best ways to reach these voters, not just because offline avenues are shut off due to what's happening in the world, but also because of the ability to target, one-to-one on digital. So let's start really soft, Ryan. Have you ever voted by mail?
I have not. This will also be my first time voting by mail, just like many, many Americans.
So you are the target audience.
Yeah, basically, I'm just targeting myself here. If you see a lot of ads that look like me, you'll know why. I'm just kidding.
I actually, fun fact, this weekend applied for my Illinois ballot.
Nice.
So very topical. I was thinking about this session when I did it. So Ryan, why should, if you're a campaign out there, why should you be thinking about digital advertising right now as for the effort of getting out the vote by mail?
There are a ton of reasons why generally you should be thinking about digital ads, but like specifically when it comes to vote by mail, I think there are a couple of key reasons. One, digital paid media, I think, to take a step back, is like really no longer a nice to have. It's really kind of a necessary part of your campaign to make sure that you are effectively reaching voters. People are no longer just listening to the radio or just watching TV. They're kind of doing everything. And on the internet, if you want to reach people, digital ads is kind of the only way you need to do that. And the reason why it's so special is because, as opposed to TV that kind of reaches everyone or anyone who's kind of watching at the same time, digital ads has the ability to specifically target users in a way that no other platforms can do. I'd say the second reason why we want to do that is just for the sheer reach. Reaching your people is so important, the people that you want to reach, but also digital ads can help you extend that reach, reach those people that are potentially persuadable. And this is the time where you want to be in front of those folks if they're in the mode of thinking about politics and making their decisions about who they want to vote for, and if they will be able to vote and where they'll be able to vote. You want to make sure that you're getting as much information out to them as possible, along with the state deadlines for that. And then lastly, which is the most topical, is that consumption habits are changing. We are living in different times, and before COVID, more people were unplugging, but even now, as we're sitting at home, people are finding ways to kind of just consume media. And not only are they consuming media, but they're consuming multiple media at the same time. I can definitely tell you that I am watching TV, searching something, talking to my friends on social media, and potentially texting or on the phone all at the same time. And if you're a smart advertiser, you are to make sure that you are in the right moment at the right time, which means you have to be everywhere at once.
Yeah, that sounds a lot like my household. Doing a lot of double screening, triple screening. So I think the big thing that I've been thinking about, and I'd love to hear how you're thinking about this from an advertising standpoint, but vote by mail really affects the timeline and the life cycle of the election. Where the election, you have get out the vote is a week, 2 weeks, a couple days before the first Tuesday in November. That's not necessarily the case anymore. We're in an election where it's predominantly going to be mail-in, or at least in a large way decided by mail-in ballots. How do you think about how the timeline and the life cycle of the election is being affected?
It's huge. It's throwing off the time. And people who have been doing this for, a couple of cycles now know, this is definitely throwing off your timelines for your get out the vote campaigns and your persuasion campaigns. You need to be thinking about your vote by mail efforts now. Just because there are a couple of key deadlines within the vote by mail process that you need to be aware of, and you want to make sure that you are educating folks on. So if you're not thinking about vote by mail now, you should maybe take a look at your state Secretary of State site and see what your deadlines are, and making sure that you have all the pieces correct, because there's probably going to be a pretty big lift on the education side that you're going to do for voters to make sure that they are doing what they need to do when they need to do it. And then the other thing here, I think, is that they're on the ballot request deadlines. This is different. Like, it's a different process, right? Like, it's happening sooner than Tuesday. Like, you know, a typical election year, everyone is kind of driving their ads towards election day, which is the first Tuesday in November, but that's not happening now. So you have to really think about, like, okay, I need to make sure that I am registering to vote, great. And then I need to request my ballot, great. What deadline is that? But then also making sure that I understand, like, how much time do I have to actually mail in my ballot? What's the deadline for that? So make sure that my vote is actually counted in this year's election. And the last piece, which I think is really important when we're talking about just like campaigns and considerations now, is the ballot chase, right? I think this is something that we have considered for a couple of years we think about this in terms of voter registration and making sure that people are registered to vote. We want to apply a similar kind of theory when we're talking about vote by mail as well. So you're running ads to make sure, like, hey, the election's happening. Are you registered to vote? Great. Have you requested your ballot? Great. That one ad isn't going to be enough. You want to do what we call a ballot chase, which is making sure that we're following up on email with other ads to say, hey, we saw that you clicked this ad. Did you go ahead and request your ballot? You want to make sure that you're constantly sending those reminders, because it's so crucially important that people are voting this year, because the process has changed, and we want to make sure that voters have the correct information within their state to make sure that they cast their ballots.
I can see a lot of campaign managers' eyes lighting up with the, like, oh, the ballot chase. We can tell you who's requested a ballot. At that point, how do we reach those folks, on Facebook and with, on their Hulus and whatnot. But I guess talk about the nuance that goes into reaching that audience, whether it's the ballot chase or the original, like, getting people to request a ballot. How do you think about that?
In so many different ways. This is really more, this is more of I think a targeting strategy that you and your campaign or your consultants or whoever would probably need to talk about what is best for you guys. When we talk about the ballot chase and just generally making sure that the information and ads are sequenced in the correct way. So again, thinking about voter registration to ballot request to return your ballot to election day. You want to, and all within a ballot chase, you want to make sure you're thinking about how you're reaching those exact voters. I think that what will happen is that, like, most people will probably tell you, and this is correct, you'll want to use some version of what we call a voter file to target people on a one-to-one match. And that's a term that you'll hear a lot. And what we mean by one-to-one match is basically saying, here are a list of people and their information. We can upload that information, all totally legal, by the way. Upload that information into Facebook or whatever other ads platform. And based on that information, we can match those profiles and target those people specifically. So you know that you are targeting the exact people that you want to talk to. While that is 100% true, that is a base of what your program should be, that's not the entire story. So in addition to doing that, you also want to make sure that you are kind of couching that with like demographic data that you get from your pollsters about who these people are. We find that the one-to-one match is an imperfect science. And so we want to make sure that to be able to build out the most robust audience possible, you need to couch that with some of the information that platforms provide. So once you have an idea of what that audience looks like, you can do a number of things to start the ballot chase. One easy thing to do is, like, do what we call a retargeting campaign. Which is basically, once somebody engages with the ad in any way, we can then go back and target that person again and again until they take the action that we want. That's one way we think about a ballot chase. Another way we think about a ballot chase is through email, which is what Toby loves to talk about, and to making sure that we're following up via email to say, hey, we saw that you started this process. Why don't you finish it? And here's a link to do that here. The ballot chase, I cannot tell you, is one of the most crucial parts of any campaign like this, when you have a bunch of different deadlines, to make sure that you have success on that side. People need constant reminders. There is a ton going on this time, of year, generally speaking, an election year, but even more this year with COVID and everything else happening. So it's going to be really important that we are reinforcing this message over and over and over again to make sure voters know what to do. In addition to that, we always want to make it as easy as possible. So like literally providing the links. We need you to click on this link. We need you to click on this link to register to vote, to make it as easy as possible for folks. Does that help? Did that answer your question, Toby?
Yeah. No, yeah, very much so. I think you're going to need to teach like a 102, a 201, a 220 class here. No, but I think that the big things, when I think about, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to reaching the right audiences and getting to the right people and helping them do the right, get to the point where they can they know what they're doing to actually register to vote or vote by mail or whatever it is. And the part that's so crucial is that it's different for so many people this time around. This isn't a typical election, and this is going to be new for a lot of people. It's going to be new for a lot of states implementing this voting system. And you've had a chance to do some of this experimentation around a few primary campaigns we've worked on. Without giving away any secret sauce, I think, is there anything you've learned broadly that you'd want to share with the larger audience about what to think about when it comes to putting these campaigns into action?
Yeah. In addition to like what I was just saying is that like sequencing, understanding ballot chase, knowing like who your target audience is and making sure that you're targeting them in a very smart and strategic way. I would say that there are 3 additional things that you guys want to consider. 1 is straightforward creative. 2, think about your ad placements. And 3, think about your landing pages. First, when we talk about straightforward creative, again, this kind of goes to what I was saying earlier about, there are a ton of moving parts, a ton of information, ton of deadlines. And by a ton, I mean like 2 or 3 deadlines, but that's still a lot of information. We want to make sure, I think the best thing that you can do is just keep your creative as simple as possible. Keep it information driven. Like this is an information campaign as much as it can be. And it's more about that than less about like impressing folks with a very well-designed, moving motion graphic ad that is beautiful and will probably make people smile. This is much more about information. So when we're talking about ads, you just want to make sure this is the date, do this thing, and kind of keep it from there. I mean, you can make them look nice, but kind of like just keep them pretty simple. The second thing we want to talk about is ad placement. To my point earlier about like people are spending more time online, people are spending more time at home. Where your ad appears matters. When your ad appears matters. So you always want to make sure that the way I always like to think about it is like put yourself in the shoes of a voter and they're looking for information. Where are all the places that they're going to go on the internet to think about information? And then that's where you should place your ads. So this could definitely be probably some search or probably social media where everything else happens in the world. So just think about like where your person would be and then make sure that your ads are targeted there. The last thing that we noticed that made a difference is landing pages. While we all love our secretaries of state, sometimes those sites are a little difficult to navigate. We found that, a really well-designed, simple landing page that kind of very clearly and simply gets people to where they need to go really helps with the conversions to getting people to register or request a ballot over time.
Yeah, some of those government sites can be really hard to navigate. And sometimes it's, there's no way around it. But where there are ways around it, you really should make an effort if you can. Okay, we'll leave it there. These are, we call this 2 big talks. They're not intended to be long, lengthy talks. We want to make these snappy, help people kind of grow in this space without really taking up, a university credit. So I guess if anybody has any follow-up questions, Ryan, they want to talk about how their program fits into, how they should think about VBM this cycle, how can they find you?
Sure. You can email me at ryan@dobigthings.com. I'm also an infrequent Twitter user. But if you tweet me, I will answer. You can find me on Twitter at Ryanne Brown.
Well, thanks for coming on to talk about voting by mail through digital advertising. I think there's, it's just a really critical part of this election suddenly. Ha ha ha. Well, that about covers it for our first edition of Do Big Talks. Thanks again to Ryanne Brown for joining. I think stay tuned for future episodes here. Should be an exciting space. And if you have ideas for topics we can cover, people who should talk about exciting digital things, email us at hello@dobigthings.com. That's hello@dobigthings.com. And we'll see you on the internet.